Play.
Awesome. We're going to wait for some music, but I want to say thank you for folks that are joining this evening to once again have another live conversation with me and our special guest. I am Council Member Carol Fife, the Council Member for Oakland's District 3, and we're going to talk about public safety, but we're going to talk about our mobile responders network, the program that we started. It's called MACRO. It's the Mobile Assistance Community Responders of Oakland program. And we're going to talk to some people who work in public safety for the macro program, as well as a local community organization that's been working on public safety for quite some time. We're going to allow people to join in as they recognize that it is 6:30. It is now 6:32. And so I want people to join in. What are your questions? What are your concerns? We're experiencing some challenges in our city and throughout the Bay Area. And it's time to chop it up, right? We're trying to come up with creative solutions to address some of the pain points that we're experiencing. And we want to make sure that we're putting people first. So, good evening to Gloria White Gardner. I've been missing you too for years, but also from these conversations. Thank you, Miss Gardner, for showing up and for always being supportive. You are one of my most favorite mentors, and I love you from a distance. And I'm glad that you're always showing up to these live sessions that I do all the way across the country. So thanks for being here. We are also going to have some comments from people who, have experienced some of the challenges that we're seeing in the city of Oakland. But I want to make clear that the issues around mental health and our mobile assistance program are not special to Oakland. There are programs like this around the country. And we know because our healthcare system is a broken system that doesn't serve the people with the most need. It is like so many other systems in this country. It serves the people who have access to resources. So our mobile assistance responders team is trying to address that. And I'm proud to say that I was one of the, I love you more, one of the council members that advocated for this historic investment in violence prevention. And this is one of the ways that we are making good on the promise that we made to Oakland residents about alternative responses to our public safety needs in the city of Oakland. So I do want to bring on one of our special guest speakers tonight that we have here with us. We have Elliott Jones. He is the director of this macro program that's been going hard every single day, 7 days a week since this spring, since April of 2022. So we're going to bring on Elliott so he can tell us how the program is going, what's working, what's not working, what support they need, because I want to be very clear that this is challenging work, y'all. This is tough work, and we need to support the people who are making the commitment to our city to make sure that it's done. So Elliott, I am so happy and proud to have you here. Like I said earlier, I saw you at the CERT training. We were passing like ships in the night, but I wanted I wanted to have a conversation with you. I'm glad we have this opportunity. So thank you for being with us tonight. Can you start with just telling us a little bit of who you are, your background, and what exactly you do, and how is macro working?
Well, thank you so much, Councilmember Fife. I wanted to say the honor is mine. We should have talked, last time, but I'm glad we're getting this conversation with some of your closest friends and constituents. What better way to have this conversation about macro? My name is Elliott Jones. I'm the program manager, but I will take the promotion whenever you're ready for it, ma'am. I am an Oakland native, born and raised. I'm actually the son of somebody who worked for the city of Oakland for 35 years. I had always had dreams about working for the city as a little kid. And I never thought that I would be back being able to do something so impactful for the city that I love and that my family has served and given up themselves for a couple generations. Really, the one thing that I want to say is that macro has been a totally community-led effort. It was by the council. It was by community groups that wanted to see this done. It has been supported by members of our NCPCs and the CPAB. There's a macro advisory board. All of these stakeholders have come together to prop up this program and make it possible for us to have an 8-week straight run of 7 days a week starting April 16th to really roll this pilot out and begin to do the refining that it's going to take for it to last beyond the pilot phase and hopefully all of us. We are very fortunate to be housed within the Oakland Fire Department, and their 150 years of history. But I look at that number and I wonder, when are Macro going to have its 150th year of celebration? I can't promise I'll be there. But this is important work and a unique approach that Oakland developed for our needs. What we have done with the program, and it's the Mobile Assistance Community Responders of Oakland, as you said it, ma'am, you're going to get a patch because a lot of people butcher that. It's an important thing that we have done is we have brought in two individuals to work in a team of two to respond to calls throughout the city that have a mental health in nature, but are mostly low acuity, non-violent, non-emergent calls. Over that time period, over these 8 weeks, we have seen over 1,100 and made 1,100 contacts with people on the streets of Oakland. And a lot of people say, well, what's a contact? Did you just wake somebody up and say hi to them? Well, that's the start of it, because truthfully, Macro is based in 3 pillars: empathy, service, and community. And we need empathy to connect and meet the people that are on the street that we are intended to serve. They have to trust us. They have to see us as a supportive force. And with those 1,100 contacts, I promise you that we are more known to those that we are there to serve than we may be in other areas throughout the city. And that is extremely important to me. The second part is service. Service takes a bunch of different ways. As you know yourself, council member, it's not a one-size-fits-all service. We can start with just talking to you, giving you the dignity of a conversation and not direction, meeting you where you are, treating you like a human being and trying to determine what's going on. That may extend to a bottle of water, a can of Dinty Moore, a blanket, something to sustain you. We are not a walking or driving pantry or anything like that, but we want to give you enough so that you can get by and not potentially have an exposure or dehydration issue that winds you up accessing emergency services in a life or death situation. After this practice happens a little while, then we get a chance at the final piece. Once somebody comes to us and says, I am ready for help, I am ready to get care, well, then my team gets excited because the final part of our puzzle is the community, the connection to the amazing service community that is available in Alameda County. Now, I'm not saying it is adequate, but it is amazing because the people that are working and doing this work are selfless. They lead with their heart and they're committed to addressing this issue. Our chief partner in this effort has been the CARES Navigation Center, run by the Alameda County DA's office. It is a great place where we've been able to take people that we meet the same day and get them into care and transitional housing. In fact, I will share one aside, and y'all may have to reel me in because I like to talk. On one of our first days of going out of the field, I wound up at the North Oakland Missionary Baptist Church over off of Chestnut and 32nd. We found a man on Easter Sunday asleep on the stairs, woke up and told me his name was King James and that he wanted to get into housing. And he was the first person, a man named King James asleep on a church is the first person that we were able to bring to the CARES Navigation Center. I found out a couple weeks after this, my mom had actually grown up going to that church. And the full circle nature of this is just amazing. Oakland's a small world, and to have that kind of happen to me in my community that she was a beneficiary of, it shows that we still have to work if we want to preserve these communities as a bastion of our culture and an opportunity for people to grow and to thrive. But that was just a quick aside. But we've been able to bring about 20 to 25 people to the CARES Navigation Center. Some of those interactions have taken multiple weeks or days to pull off, and some happen in the moment. But what we are committed to is taking a bite at the apple every single day, coming there and trying to provide an intervention before it has to escalate to the need of emergency services, which could be fire or police. If I can keep the fire truck in the fire engines in the fire station and cops on the beat doing what they need to do, then we are going to be in a much better place as a community because we can be a compassionate care centered model first. And everything we've seen is nothing has to escalate beyond us. If we can get there in time, if we can address the issue before it is too early, and if we have the opportunity to build a relationship. So needless to say, it's going well because I have 14 amazing people that are out there every day of this week doing everything they can to serve this city. And I am honored to be their program manager. And I am truly, I don't use this word lightly, but they are truly heroes. And Oakland should be proud to have them.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And so thank you for sharing this, sharing that information with us. So Elliott, can you just walk us through a day of the macro team? So you show up, you have 2 shifts, you have priority areas. Can you explain that a little bit and how that works for the city? You're muted.
I knew it. First, I'd love to clarify. We're actually currently working 1 shift. We're only working a day shift, which is a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. We will be adding a swing shift, which is 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And we are having discussions about the length of the swing shift because at some point, if there aren't services available, there's the risk reward about having your crew out there too late if there isn't an opportunity for them to truly be impactful. So we will be adding the second shift, which were the terms of the pilot, up to 16 hours of coverage if possible. And we are operating in 2 geographic zones. In East Oakland, it is it's High Street below 580 all the way to the San Leandro border. We have broken East Oakland into 2 areas, which 2 separate crews work. One of those areas is High Street to 73rd or Hagenberger, and the other one is 73rd Hagenberger all the way to the San Leandro border. We do this so that the neighborhood can get a familiarity with the vehicles and start to expect to see what macro looks like when we show up. In West Oakland, our initial boundaries were Brush Street and West Grand all the way to the estuary. And this is a great boundary. There's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of opportunity to help in that area. But one thing we found is that there was such a greater need in West Oakland demanded by the residents. And as we were hearing contact from residents, why can't you cross the street and come and help me over here? I'm just 2 blocks out of the impact zone. Can you come and help me? And we decided that there's times to be rigid about what we can do, but there's also times to be flexible. And if we can have a greater presence and impact over the whole of West Oakland, we can do more during this time and building a rapport and building familiarity with the community than just rigidly focusing on our zones. It has, as the day starts, they come in at 7 a.m. We meet and deploy out of the Fire Training Center, which is in Jack London. It's a great central location because we can get out east quickly and we can get out west very quickly. So from there, they are assigned their teams and their crews. There will be a shift supervisor who will go over kind of the goals for the day. And it's always a reminder, communicate and stay safe. We don't have body armor. We have T-shirts. Uniforms are coming in the next couple of weeks. But my crew's safety is the one thing that I am most concerned about at all times. They need to look out for each other. They need to protect one another because we know how avoidable incident can doom this whole program. And I know that's dire. It may seem like it's dire, but we want to treat it with that respect and that importance of the work that we're doing. So they get their crew assignments, and let's just use West Oakland for an example. Right now, our teams are focused on view activities. And on-view activities are the crews themselves self-dispatching and trying to put eyes on a potential call or incident before it would ever become an incident. This is training in twofold. They can begin to decipher what we can do and what we can't do for when we are dispatched calls or we wake up and there's a list of calls queued for us, that they can put eyes something on quickly and begin to understand what the care plan is or what opportunities are available for that person. So we all have different ways of driving. I like to hit the industrial side and then I cross over and I go down. I like going the numbers all the way down until I run into McClymonds and I got to loop around. But this is because I grew up there and I'm very, very familiar with the neighborhood. Others have taken a different approach. We can get down on Wood Street because we know some people are there that we may be working on trying to get some people some opportunities. Others have found that the San Pablo provides the best opportunity to get people that are in need, that are in the view of folks that may call. So these learnings vary, but the best thing I could say is that we're able to canvas everything. And because we're working every day of the week, we're truly able to put eyes on stuff and to come back to people and to say, hey, put me in the field in the same area tomorrow. I want to take a shot at this person. I think we're going to get it. I love when my team comes at me with that. And I always tell them, if you lead with your heart first in these, I'll never be upset at you. I will never be upset at you. We can always talk it out and figure it out later, but lead with that heart first. That's what these people deserve. That's what the community deserves. So they will work, and as they identify things, they will call into dispatch with their radio. It is off, so I'm not going to get yelled at. We call into dispatch, and we offer an incident. More often than not, they have been wellness checks, individual sleepings. We have seen an uptick in behavioral health concerns, which is what we feel is the lowest level of a mental health challenge. Or excuse me, a behavioral health challenge is a mental health concern. It's where somebody's acting a little erratic. They're not violent, but something's a little off. This has happened in front of businesses where we try to make contact and the business owner will say, they're not really violent, but they look a little off today. You know, you should probably step back a little bit. And we take that person's word for it. And they say, you know, usually they're calm, you know, after a couple of days after this. We'll be back tomorrow to see if we can put eyes and give that person any resources that they need to know that somebody cares. I think it's understated how much a community exists within the unhoused networks of the city of Oakland. They look out for each other, whether it's the group that is in the park behind Fire Station 3 or the folks down on Wood. Often when we pull up, somebody will say, can you come and check on my friend? Can you come and check on somebody that lives down in this tent? We haven't seen them in a couple of days. And while that may not be the people that call down the road, we want them to know that they can access our service just by seeing us driving down. If there's somebody in need in these areas, they shouldn't be overlooked or have to wait to a point where the only option is emergency service transport to Highland. You know, if we can put eyes and connect you to some of the amazing community partners that are out there doing work, whether it be Roots Health Clinic in the East or Lifelong Medical, who I've seen all throughout West Oakland, sometimes in our wake as we're leaving, they're pulling up. And that allows us to know that other people are out here. And we are working to coordinate with those different services to truly understand what they can deliver for the community, because we are in the business of having to deliver for the individuals we're there to serve. And if a partner is unable to meet our needs, they can't really be a trusted partner for us. So a lot of what we've done in these first 8 weeks is determine who's available, when they're available, and how can they help. Luckily, our team has worked in this field. Different members have worked in this field, and they have personal contacts that we've been able to use to get around some of the roadblocks that may exist when you're looking for a formal introduction or ways of working, because there really should be no hurdles in offering care. You know, we're out there on the street, and if it's keeping the fire engines in the house and the cops on the beat, let's do everything we can to get care.
So thank you. On that topic, do you feel like you've been successful in these several weeks that Macro has been in operation? Have you kept fire trucks in the stations? Have you kept OPD focusing on more violent crimes? Do you have data to show how that's been impactful?
So I only have anecdotal data. I don't have anything from PD, and they do. I always want to give, you know, they have a hard job. I would not want to wake up with that job under any circumstances. And we do not have access to all of our fire data. We are just a component. We're trying to get in and be able to pull and get those permissions. But we do know for a fact that we have kept engines in the house. And the one thing that has demonstrated this more, and it's a focus of our development and growth as a program, interdepartmental dispatches are important. As we move into fire season, if a fire truck is called to something or an engine is called to something that can be handled by a macro crew, they are starting to, especially those that are in our zone, are starting to call in and say, can a crew come over here? Is a crew available? Because then we can get there and we can release the engine. If it's not life-threatening, if it doesn't require a paramedic or an ALS transport, we can, which is lights and sirens, we can get there, release the fire truck, release the ambulance, and release the cops, and we can work with the individual. This happened This happened one time. It was like a perfect storm, Councilmember Fife. I should have filmed this, but I was like, nah, everybody's going to get all weirded out. It's the first time he's doing this and he's filming it. So we didn't film it, but we got a call from dispatch, which is how we've been doing it lately. They call me and say, hey, there's an engine at this address. Here's the scenario. It's a mental health concern. It was actually a young lady made a comment on the phone to her mother, and they don't have the best relationship, about, I took some pills and I don't want to be here anymore. So this kicked over this whole thing, which you have to call poison control. You have to have the police out there. You have to have a fire engine. So when we showed up, there was one fire engine with 5 people on it. There was an ambulance with 2 people, and there were 4 cop cars with 2 people each. Within 5 minutes of us getting there, we were able to release the ambulance, release the fire engine, and half of the cops that weren't stationed in that area left. So it was a huge win for us on many different levels, because we were able to demonstrate our value to the other emergency services. And thankfully, the young lady just needed somebody to talk to. It happened that she had taken a couple Advil, and her mother, in a heightened state because of their frustrations, their relationship with each other, called poison control and said my daughter was committing suicide. Miscommunication. But we were able to get there, clarify the communication, and release all these things, and then speak with the young lady. My team spent, I believe, 30 to 40 minutes with this person, making sure they were comfortable and had some resources in hand that they could seek further assistance with their mother and everybody else that was involved on the family side. But the police weren't needed for that. The fire engine definitely wasn't needed for that. The ambulance could have been if there was a poison control issue, but those other 3 should be back to work. And at the time, it was a weekend, so my team of 3 and Elliott, doing supervisor stuff that day, really showed up on scene, and we got to see how we're going to impact every single one of those services in 1 minute. And
wow.
So that day, I would say about once a week we get a call from a fire engine. Once a week we get a request for them, whether they're there or not, to come and take something off of their plate. That hasn't happened so much with PD, but I will say when we do run into PD, to a man, the officers have been extremely supportive. They have been cheering on our folks, just like the firefighters and the battalion, the chief structure. We do feel that we're a part of it. And I think that's important for our team to know that they are a valued member of this service. But seeing that in action, it just gives me hope that I'm like, okay, we can do this. They can go focus on fire season. Cops can focus on what's going on. Give us the people that need help. We want that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I feel like I dropped off the screen for a second. I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I caught the overall message that you were trying to share with that story. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's beautiful that you were able to show up and support in that way. I do want to be able to take a couple questions from the people who are weighing in on Facebook. So Nora Smith is saying, has there been a phone number established for macro yet, or are calls to macro still being routed through OPD?
Well, thank you, Ms. Smith, for your question. I'm glad that you know the 911 system and how it works a little bit. All 911 calls go through PD. What we are doing, the best way we believe to keep PD out of a situation is that they're not even called. So there will be a macro direct dispatch line. Yes, I know the number. No, I will not share the number today. We just are not ready just yet. We have to work with our partners in the fire dispatch center. Fire has its own dispatch center. And I want to say this, dispatching is the most critical component in all of this. And if you know a dispatcher, hug them, prop them up. It's often thankless work, but so critical to all emergency services. And we are fortunate on the OPD dispatchers and the fire dispatchers to have committed individuals who love this city and they want to see this program work and they want to deliver for the citizens. That being said, when you call the cops or when you call PD, they ask you who, what, where, and weapons. When you call fire, medical fire, and where you at. Because when you want the cavalry to come, there's not a bunch of questions you're going to ask. So what we're asking of the fire dispatch center is to truly change their ways of working, to begin screening calls, to begin doing triage. And to totally transform that, they need to be supported with training. They need to work on our communication with our team. And it's a longer process than I think any of us thought. But what we're doing now to perfect it with them is going to make sure that this lasts beyond all of us and really ensure the success of the program. So I just want to say to all of our Oakland fire dispatchers, you are amazing. We are so grateful for you, and we wouldn't be able to do the work we're doing now without their support. And I'm just a big fan of them and our friends at PD, but I got to give a little shout to my fire folks.
Thank you for sharing that. And I want to say that I'm also proud for having suggested that it go through fire, and being one of the earliest proponents of that. And I was actually just like, I remember the energy of when I was a little kid looking for 4-leaf plovers. I don't know what it was. And just like thinking I found them, and just the elation. That's exactly how I felt when I saw a macro vehicle in West Oakland. I was like, yes, look at them in the field. So I was really excited about that.
That makes me so happy. My team is going to be elated because it's, we don't know who sees us. I get calls like, hey, I saw your people, but to be able to say, hey, you're noticed. Like, don't think you're not being noticed. It's and really, I want to say, yes, the foresight of putting this is no knock on any community organization that was vying for the RFP. They made this possible. All of them, from CPA, from ATPT, they all deserve a pat on the back. Urban Strategies, any community member that spoke at event, they all made this possible. But coming into fire was the best thing for us, and not only because we have an amazing 37th fire chief, brilliant man and a leader that this city is lucky to have. I know he's from Baton Rouge or Louisiana. We're not letting him go. He's going to be Oakland before I'm done with him. And,
shout out to Reggie Freeman.
Dr. Chief.
Dr. Chief.
And then finally, for me, the most important piece of this, and I think it was all unintended. It's just, she would say that it's divine faith and intervention. I am honored to work under Mrs. Venus Ward Ratliff, who is the Medical Service Division Manager for the Oakland Fire Department. This woman is a legend, and I'm legend. She has been in the field as a paramedic for over 30 years. And then you look at her and you're like, that math don't add up, because it don't. But she comes with so much knowledge and so much experience from her time. She's universally practically adored in emergency services. And being able to lean on somebody like that, being able to try and to beat my head against the wall, or to have concerns, or to have questions, or to just run things by her, it's been so invaluable. And I can't even truly articulate the impact she has had on our program and had on me, but being able to work under her, because MSD and medical services call the majority of calls into the fire department, she has a vision for how all this can fit together and the true impact we can have. It may be the forest, and I'm here looking at the trees, but you need that support. And I'm so grateful for Mrs. Sward Ratliff. And I really hope if you ever see her in the street, just thank her, because she has been serving this city. She's a daughter of Maxwell Park. She has been down, and this is both of our best opportunity to give back, although she's been giving back for her whole career. Now I get to do it with her.
Wonderful. I do want to say another instance that I heard about Macro doing some really, really amazing work around some individuals that I know in East Oakland, around supporting at a senior center out near the San Leandro border. I was just informed today that you all helped to alleviate a situation where there were some individuals that were needing services and were of concern in front of a senior center, and you all helped to just completely control, alleviate, help, support in that situation. And it was helpful for the residents of the center, as well as the individuals who were congregating in front of the center. So I wanted to just let you know that I heard about that this morning, and I wanted to give your team props for that. So take them back that information as well. Just wanted to share that.
No, absolutely. And thank you, Councilmember Fife. This is, I only get a sliver from them. Like some of the stuff that they did today, it baffled me. But when I hear stuff like this, when we start to dig a little bit deeper, it's evident the impact these type of programs can have, and not just on our city, but on everywhere in the county. There's already been some interest throughout the county for how can these programs be expanded. And one thing to Oakland's credit, I hope that we're proving, I hope that people can see that if you can do it in Oakland, with the threshold isn't that high, the money isn't that big. If you want to commit to this program, all you need is well-trained people, a committed dispatch center that's going to support you, technology, radios, computers, and you can do it with minivans, as we've proven.
Right.
And we will continue to do this. There's a global supply chain backup, so we can't just buy new shiny toys, but new shiny toys in Oakland anyway. So I don't want a new shiny toy. I want them to come out and see my crew in minivans going through it. And then when we are back on the scene with uniforms and the whole nine, we will have earned it. And I think that's a big part about this program. We are trying to earn it the right way for the city. And while it's only a pilot program, I wake up every day and my team does too. We're pushing for permanency, whatever that looks like. I know you're going to tell me what it looks like, council member, but we are pushing for permanency in our actions every day. And the moment we get that green light for council, we will start the hard work of developing an expansion plan, bringing more people into the fold, getting my temporary folks brought on to full time, and committing to this program for in perpetuity, because that's what it's going to take to bring Oakland back.
I agree. Completely and wholeheartedly. Well, I'm going to take a few more questions. You did mention the budget. How will the budget be used in this particular pilot program, and for how many years?
So right now, the pilot, as I've understood it, is an 18-month pilot. We do have 1.8 million from the general fund, but we also have a lot more. And we also have $10 million from the state of California, which we believe should be able to get us to 3 to 5 years. But that's at our current levels. If we start talking about citywide expansion and 24/7 service, that all starts to dwindle a little bit. So the budget is something that we're constantly thinking about. And truthfully, I want to be able to bring something to council soon. It's not in time for the mid-cycle, but being able to say, what is it going to take for this commitment to happen? Because we can give data, we can talk about our impact, which we feel is important, but having some guidance to say, this is what we need to see for us to say, yes, forever, bam, go. Because I have 14 anxious people. I have 4 to 5, 6 more that are going to be starting on Monday to give us 20. Wow. And we feel with 20 people, we can meet the operational goals of the pilot with the up to 16 hours of coverage, 7 days a week, and the dispatch function. But beyond that, as we expand the other territories, there needs to be this commitment that we can stand on, because I'm trying to build a career for certain people, and they need to know that this is going to last. Otherwise, we won't be able to attract the top talent. And we have been extremely fortunate in the people that we've gotten that have taken a chance on this program, because it was truly a chance. And I say I work for them, and I truly do.
Well, here's one of the thems. It looks like Joseph John is saying, macro responder here. Glad you got excited to see our vans. Love this team. Love the city. Thanks for giving us opportunities to reach out to folks who need a little help. We're here for y'all. Joseph.
JJ. Way to go, buddy. Remember this during evaluation time. Way to go, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
JJ is one of our amazing responders. He actually worked in West Oakland today. I know that he responded to the call I was talking about of the individual in her house where they would just put eyes on it, but they have a plan to go back. I know he could speak to this, and we will get to a point where I'd love to bring my responders. I'd love to bring you a couple responders to talk to, so you can hear it straight from them. Yeah. I talk a lot and people get annoyed at my voice after a while. So having the folks in the field doing the work up here is I think, the next phase, because once you hear it from them and their stories, it makes it even more real. And you'll kind of get a glimpse of what I get to live in every day. And I'm so grateful for JJ and his teammates in the West today, Charlotte and Cora. And Cora and JJ work the West a lot. They're showing up every day and they get excited to get out to West Oakland, which, when I was growing up, I got excited doing community events in West Oakland. So I love that they're coming back out there and committing to the West, because we need that.
Wow. Thank you, JJ. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Cora, for being our mobile assistance community responders in Oakland, in West Oakland. I want to talk to you all personally. I would love, actually, Elliott, to have some of the responders back so the community can talk to them, and so I can have more conversation with them just to get a better understanding. of what this work looks like, what this commitment to our community looks like. So I think that would be a great idea.
Well, I got a better idea. How about we get you on a ride along, Councilmember Fife? Let's put you out in the field one day. Let's do it.
Schedule it.
Schedule done.
Let's do it. We got to get Tanya Love on the scheduling so we can make it happen. We have another question from Nora Smith saying, is there a website or social media we can follow for Macro?
So I got a little ahead of myself and created a social media account with one of our community advisory board members. And then we talked to the PIO who said, the goal is within the city of Oakland, only departments have a centralized social media and that we funnel things through there. We want to do things the right way. So we do have it. If it is to change, we will begin to change. I have to make a case for it. Cahoots and other programs do a really good job of their social media. But I think for us, there's HIPAA concerns. So we will share things out through FIRE, through the OFD official Instagram account. And then another great follow is Dr. Chief Reggie Freeman. He posts daily run stats for the Macro program. And according to his count, yesterday we had 62 contacts throughout the city of Oakland. And I believe 20 plus of those were in West Oakland. So this is what it's going to take for us to truly put eyes on people and develop a rapport and then get them into care. It's not going to happen overnight. We won't get 1,000 done in a week, but we can sit there and plan and come back over and over again to try to have a result of any kind. And yeah, the website that we have that Councilmember Fife shared in the chat is the most up-to-date site. I have some more updating to do. When you're a small team, you wear a lot of hats, and it will get better. It will get more robust as I am able to focus more on an administrative posture and let operations handle itself. And the only way that's possible is because I have amazing people like JJ and others that we trust. As they're developing trust, they have my total trust because I'm asking a lot of them. I'm asking them to represent the city. I'm asking them to stay safe. I'm asking them to be that first image of what a responder is. And that's a burden. And I mean, I couldn't pick 14 to 20 people that are better to do this. And wow. They are truly the ones that deserve all the credit.
So we have another question from Althoff, and we're winding down on our time together this evening. But here's another question. Are you able to hospitalize if needed for serious mental health concerns if the individual is willing to go voluntarily, or do the police still have to be called?
So it sounds like you're, in the 5150 realm. And no, we are not responding to 5150s. The rules that govern 5150s are that police is required. And we feel that we will lose a lot of credibility if we're on scene and somebody has to be in a voluntary hold, which is the 5150. Another thing is we don't transport to hospitals, John George, Highland, Kaiser, or otherwise. That is ALS and BLS transports. We can coordinate that transport, but I wouldn't put that on my crew. Our job is to kind of be that conduit to the medics and keep the paramedics and keep the cops out of it. And so that's really our best bet. And then make the connection to the service network. I don't think that can be overstated enough. Like, the most important thing is to get these people to the folks that can truly help them. If more and more people are utilizing the CARES Navigation Center, they can increase their hours of operation. They can open another one. They can hire more people. And we can now have a more streamlined process to get more people in there and guarantee that they're going to get the help that they need, whether it's diversion help, whether it's transitional housing, long-term housing, whatever the situation calls for. But you got to feed these systems if they're going to last. And we see what happens with Santa Rita and John George. If you feed it, it becomes too big to fail. So we want to feed these other things, make them scrambling for people. And then when they finally say, well, we can shut down Santa Rita, it's like, well, yeah, there's only 30 people there. The rest have gotten the help that they need. That may be an exaggeration, but that's what I want to see with this program.
You better preach. You better tell the truth. That is exactly the goal that we should have. Serving people so much that we put ourselves out of business for these other systems. Absolutely. I love that. So, but what do you say to the people who are more critical, who are more suspicious, or who are more cynical about this type of service? Like, this is keeping people on the streets. This is not addressing the problem. We do need more punitive consequences for individuals that you come in contact with? What would you say to them?
Well, the one thing I would be like, punitive consequences and contact are two totally wild ends of the spectrum. I think that everybody does have a right to dignity and opportunity to exist. And so if you call me and you're saying, I'm annoyed that there's this guy in front of my favorite coffee shop, that's just going to make me mad, because you don't have a right to be annoyed at that person. It disrupted your day a little bit, but if they're on the sidewalk, they're not bothering anybody, they're not making it uncomfortable or unpleasant situation, they have a right to exist and live. I'll send a crew over there to talk to the individual, but we're not there to move him. We're not there to punish him or scold him. We're there to connect with them. And that is the patience that is going to be required for us to do this right. If you want a result, you want somebody taken away, odds are they're going to wind up back where they were, desperate. So we want to get to people before they're desperate. We want to show them that even at your lowest, somebody's going to show up and care. And that person's going to show up the next day too, and the next day, and the next day. And whatever it takes to get you into the system that you need to help yourselves, we're prepared to do. Other organizations don't have that. They have to be focused on the end goal of what could happen. And my thing is, what will happen if we don't show up every day? What will happen if they are left to think that there is nothing for them in this world? Well, then you start to find the desperation and the similarly random criminal activities that are just people screaming for help. So we're going to just show up every day, 7 days a week, over and over again, to prove that this is the way to do it. And my crew is not going to have anything bad to say. They're not going to pout, because they have all told me they are here to serve. And that's just the point. We don't put that on our badge, because that's the bare minimum. We're there to serve.
Elliott, thank you, thank you, thank you. I guess my last question would be, how can macro be supported? There's a question from Omar Alvarez Espinoza asking, how can macro be supported by nonprofits and other groups that have policy advocacy plans?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you, Councilmember Fife, and your whole team. This is, yes, our first real conversation. And you know, I am blessed to operate in the zones that I think I have some of the best leaders in this city that oversee those zones. Just so happens there's other similarities too. But I want to say that, you know, we are able to be in areas that reflect our communities, that historically represent Oakland. And that is only through the leadership at every level. So I am blessed to be able to be this close to you all and to make these communities my priority, because that's not often the case when these programs come up. So really hats off to you all and the entire city council, and even the members who I am not able to serve their districts, because they even had the foresight to be like, do what you got to do there and let us know when you're ready. So the other four, we are also very grateful for, because they have allowed us the patience to do this. And they have also been a pushing back against their constituencies that want to see more and more. And I am grateful for that. The way that the nonprofits and the service network group can truly support us, I need to know what's going on. I can't be everywhere. I think I can put my email in the chat, or if any way to share my email, ejones, Jones, the number 3, at oaklandca.gov. If you're a community-based organization, you want to see how you can help, you have services, you have supplies, you want to discuss further, please shoot me an email. Either myself or one of the folks who is handling our resource packet and our resource mapping will set up a meeting and set up a further conversation. You know, I'm reminded of a poem I once read, you know, nobody makes it out here alone. And that's truly it. We can't have the only solution. We can't be the only ones with it. And the only way it's going to work is if you all come to the table and say, this is what we can do. We can help with this component, this segment of it. And then I'm like, all right, now let's get to work. So we need you, and we're happy to have you, and we'll always be here for you all, Oakland.
What an amazing way to close this out. Mr. Jones, you have been a wonderful guest, full of information, full of knowledge. We are so grateful to have your work in the city of Oakland for this pilot program that we will make permanent, that we will fund robustly. I know you said that you will not have your ask ready for the mid-cycle budget, but because this had so much unanimous support from the entire city council, from so many community groups, I think it's a no-brainer that we have to continue this. So when you are ready to present us with the information, it will be completely supported. I am 100% sure of that. And I just want to thank you. I can't thank you enough for the commitment that you have to the city of Oakland, where you were born and raised. And I look forward to many more conversations with you and your staff. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yes, ma'am. And a little inside baseball. Let's think about a 6-month period, and we'll maybe we could have that report, and we just go from there. So we'll do the math,
Sounds
but
good.
it's right around the corner.
You'll bring it to my committee first, public safety.
Yes, ma'am. I can't wait.
All right, sir. Thank you so much again.
Thank you all. God bless
All right.
Oakland.
Good night. Wasn't that awesome? Wasn't that awesome? Elliott Jones just left off talking about how community organizations could help. And I think that is a perfect segue to our next guest, who is coming to speak to us. He was mentioned by Elliott Jones in the earlier statements. And so we're going to bring on another organization, and the representative, Jame Burch from the AntiPolice Terror Project. We are so honored to have you here as well, because your organization was one of the organizations that was instrumental in bringing this forward. So I just wanted to say thank you for all of your work, and just share with us a little bit about your org and what you're doing.
For sure. It's great to be here, Councilmember Fife. And it's great to hear Mr. Jones before you. It's really exciting to see something that APTP has fought so hard for come to fruition, and to have someone who, I don't know the man, but sounded very, very genuine and heartfelt in his engagement with the work here in Oakland. And that's everything that we've been asking for in the program and fought for. And you know how hard it is to put something through bureaucracy, and at the other side of it, have someone like that work. It's just one of the, it's very rewarding, as I'm sure you know, and know better than I do. So again, I'm Jame Burch. I'm the policy director for the AntiPolice Terror Project. We're an organization based here in Oakland. We've been around for more than a decade, and what we do is fight to end police violence in communities of color, namely Black and brown communities. And so in the city of Oakland, that has meant fighting back against a police department that has a long and detailed history of violence, misconduct, and overspending. And at the state level, it's been a process of attempting to move California from the Stone Ages when it comes to their legislation relating to policing to a place where police can be held accountable and where there's some modicum of transparency at the state level.
Thank you, James. I think that was so important to state, because just the name alone, the AntiPolice Terror Project, for some reason, people can't seem to get right. But you, all of these years later, people are tried to create a narrative around what the organization does. And the explanation that you just gave clarifies it a bit. But can you also speak to what it means to be anti-police terror in respect to how people are saying anti-police? Does that make sense? It's a little, people are trying to say that, or have over time tried to invalidate the work done by the organization and dismiss it completely. And I think, and I want to thank you specifically for your policy work, but just the passion and sacrifice that you've made in this work to consistently be at the table with the facts and the data about what needs to change around our archaic systems of public safety. Can you speak to that? Because people say it's police terror. You all want to be terrorists to police. And you just said a little bit about that. It is about holding accountable systems that are what were in the Stone Ages before actually you were on the scene. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Our job, first and foremost, is a job of public education, right? We live in a country where from the moment folks are born, they are filled with propaganda around policing that prevents, that later in life prevents rational discourse, right? You're 3 years old, you're getting Paw Patrol toys, little friendly dog cop toys, or people are dressing for police officers for Halloween. Police on TV are seen as noble, venerable, honorable, never tell a lie. They're the good guys as opposed to the bad guys. And ultimately, what we feel like that does is prevent people from hearing the truth when it comes to policing. And so we have the very difficult job and the burden of providing with painful detail and endless facts and data a the case for why policing in our society is indeed harmful, the case for why many of the things we think police do, they actually do not do or are not effective at doing, right? Data around what actually improves public safety, what programs you can invest in to actually improve public safety, to decrease the murder rate, to decrease acts of violence. And then, unique to our history here in the United States, like municipal spending and how the police have gone from an agency that gets maybe 10 or 15% of municipal budgets to an agency that gets 40% of general funds across the country. And so when you combine all of the things I'm talking about together and all the information that we have on law enforcement, the way I say it is, if you sit me in a room with anyone who's willing to have an honest conversation for a couple hours, and I can just rap with them about everything I know about police, it's impossible for them to come out of that room without thinking that we need to do something drastically differently, right? We may disagree on the road to get there or how viable that road is, but no rational thinker can leave that room thinking that we still need to do policing and maintain the status quo. Right,
Wow.
that goes from the folks we talk to on the street all the way up to and because you've been in some of those rooms with the politicians, the ones who don't like us. They'll be unbelievably frank in a room where there's no microphones and they know that it's off record, and they will tell you, "Oh yeah, we know that you're right about the police, but we're never going to do XYZ." Right, and so that. And so this is something that even our opponents know, our political opponents, police union lobbyists know, and will be very frank about. And so the challenge we have is police rely on and thrive off of disinformation. Right? That's how they maintain a status quo where they get 40% of the budget. Right? Crime is scary. Crime is bad. If you want to stop crime, you need police. Right, flies in the face of the realities that we know. Let's look at the current situation where, for instance, crime rates are down, police numbers are at historic lows in the city of Oakland, but we're not allowed to speak to that. We're not allowed to use. We're not allowed. Right. Crime rates down, police rates historically low. So according to the police, and the way they've been crying wolf over the last couple of years. Right, with the numbers of law enforcement officers we have now, crime should be at a historic high. Right. What they're calling crime should be at a historic. That's not the case. Right. Because they know that. They know, like we know, that what we call crime, right, is dependent on macroeconomic factors. Right. It's dependent on what percentage of the people are housed, what percentage of the people are fed, what percentage of the people are employed. Right. How many social services do we have? Do people have health care? Do they have mental health services? Right, you give me all of that data, and I can tell you how a society is doing. Right, how many people are forced to sleep outside. Right, and so again, it's not most of this stuff. The most frightening thing is most of this stuff is common sense when we get down to it. Right, it's sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to touch on that again because I want to make sure that whoever is listening, whomever will go back and review this recording once it's over, to state that right now, as Jame Burch just stated, crime in the city of Oakland is declining. The number of officers that are on the force right now is at historic lows. So that is not the narrative that you're hearing in the news media. Why is that? Why is the narrative and the images that you're seeing on the news consistently different than the actual numbers? We have more academies slated than the city can actually populate, than the police department can train for, and crime is still declining, and we don't have more officers on the street. So what's happening? James, I think it's so critical that you said you can tell the health of the society and whether or not people will be engaged in illicit activity or some of these things based on how many people are housed, if people are eating. We're in a time where inflation is excessively high right now, so that you can kind of predict what will happen as a result of people not having their basic needs met. And so my position is that if we know that officers are not going into law enforcement, individuals are choosing not to become law enforcement officers in the numbers that they have historically done, partly because they're going to say different reasons, but partly because it's not what people thought it was. It is, you do become a healthcare provider, you do become a social worker, you do have to do a lot of extra things than people typically would have thought of that people shouldn't have to do in law. That should be the job of our healthcare system, right? And so that's why we need to fund our healthcare system and our social services, but we don't do that. So if we see historically that people are not going into that career, they're choosing not to be in the career, then we've got to think about different ways to address public safety anyway, no matter what. Even if you don't want to, the numbers show that we have to do this thing differently, right? And so I'm glad that you touched on the fact that crime is decreasing, and so are the number of officers. And why isn't that being discussed? Why aren't those the news headlines that you see? That might signal that there is, I don't want to say an op, but sometimes that's what it feels like with the way that the media is choosing to discuss. I get tweeted this a lot, like, why isn't Carol doing anything about anti-Asian hate? And I'm just like, there's no other community in the city of Oakland that has as many police as Chinatown. I just went to an event for Queer Trans Asian Pacific Islander Month, a beautiful celebration at the Oakland Chinatown Cultural Center, the cultural center that is in Chinatown. There was a police car on every corner. And I was like, number one, how is this being paid for? And why is it that the narrative is that there's more crime in Chinatown than there is in East Oakland? And so I saw two to three different rotating vehicles and then stationary cars with their lights blinking. And so I say that to articulate, there are communities that are calling for officers, like some of the conservative voices in Chinatown, and the need in terms of safety. And I don't want to be dismissive of safety, but East Oakland is not getting that attention. East Oakland doesn't get the resources that they need to make sure that and West Oakland too. I'm the representative of West Oakland, but something politically is happening in the city that allows these disparities to happen. And I want to be clear that I'm not advocating for the police, but I'm saying there are choices that are being made that are not council-based choices. There are political decisions that are happening. There are budgetary decisions that are happening that are not coming through a legislative process. And that to me signals that there are plans that are being created and actualized and implemented that have nothing to do with the decision-making body of this city. And that should be concerning to the voters. It should be concerning to taxpayers. And it should be concerning to the individuals who want to see an investment in what really creates safety, which is housing, healthcare, education, jobs, and things to that nature. I'm sorry, James. I know I brought you on here as a special guest to speak, but there's so many contradictions that we don't have the time to discuss because we're actually trying to create solutions. But there's contradictions on every corner at every turn, and I just wanted to highlight a few of those.
Absolutely, I have some too.
Okay.
Because it's budget time and there's so many questions and so few answers. And so here's some of the things that are kind of confusing to us related to the budget when it comes to policing, right? Where the police, as Libby called it, right-sized the policing budget last year and subsumed, 30 some odd, $1 million of overtime per year, right? But still the police overspent by $7.5 million over the last year. Like how? You all just went, I thought we just fixed that, but you still managed to go over. So it's not even it seems like there's no number that's enough, right? There were 51 resignations from the police department the last year, more than 2 times the average over the last 9 years. We saw failure of leadership on the exit interviews as the number one cited concern. And so, that's, again, just not the narrative we hear from the police department. 5 academies in one budget cycle cost the city $20 million, right? And the rationale behind spending that was to prevent the loss of, let's say $5 million in Measure Z funds, right? And so to spend $20 million on these not filled academies to save $5 million, you do the math. Just, one of those things where I'm like, who's making those decisions? Like the ARPA funds, year 2, Libby's budget came down, and then, no, sorry, we saw in the Q3 budget report, like buried in a table, table 10 in the Q3 budget report, says $87 million is going to the cops from this year's ARPA funds. And for those who aren't familiar, ARPA is the American Recovery Plan Act that had 2 years of funding that comes down from the federal government. And so, like, there's, with no detail as to where that money is going, what it's doing, if the police can't fill their department, is this money that's just sitting? Is it being allocated elsewhere because they don't even have all of the positions filled, so they're not even spending all of their money. So if you're not spending all of your money, how did you also overspend on overtime, right? And then where are the salary savings going?
Right.
Because usually the salary savings just go funneled right back to the police department, sometimes to pay for new positions, right? And then also with the ARPA funds, if you're paying $87 million of ARPA funds this year, what happens, whenever we try to pay for a program with one-time funds, they say, how are you going to pay for this in perpetuity, right? But the police can spend $87 million, and then next year, what, are we just on the hook for it? And so I know that there's a laundry list of more questions that come with the police department, and it's just telling that things like the calls for service data, which was asked for last year, and again, for folks who aren't familiar, calls for service data kind of details what police are doing with their time. What calls are they going out for? How long do they spend on those calls? And are those calls resolved? That data was supposed to be out in March, I think, and then April, and then May. And now we hear it's not going to be out until you all are, essentially have to make all of your budget decisions for mid-cycle, right? The information comes out June 21st or something. That's not helpful. Right. I'm sure they could have done something to give you that information beforehand. But again, we have an administration that knows that programs like macro are the future, right? Paying OPD $400 million a year is the past, right? But when you're beholden to the police department as the administration, your job is to slow down this process as much as possible. Right. So that's what we're witnessing here. Is we're witnessing amazing people like you, right? Try to resource folks like Elliott Jones to do work. We see a community that sees a program in macro that has tremendous potential, right? And we know that there's an administration who, cannot support macro because if they support macro, that means they're supporting the decrease in size of a police department, right? You can't love macro and love the police department at the same time, because if macro is successful, the police department will decrease dramatically in size. Right. And so folks like, the mayor who pretend to like macro are being disingenuous. She can't love macro. Her campaign and the campaigns of the people who are part of her, crew of politicos depend on the support of the police department and a close relationship. And that means when the police department says, we don't like macro because it threatens our police union's job security. Right. Because we are going, 100 officers are no longer going to be able to feed their families off of the city of Oakland if macro expands, right? And so that's a very difficult situation for politicians like Libby when they have to pretend to like a program that's inevitable and at the same time try to defeat it at the same time.
So then what you see is and the manufacture of consent through the use of the Fourth Estate. And I apologize for the people who are listening out. So I'll put it in terms that are just more practical. If you follow certain journalists, you will see nothing but an influx of fear mongering, and the scary things that nobody wants to experience. And once again, I don't want to dismiss or diminish that crime is scary, and it is happening. But we can do the work, and we can create the structures for people to be healthier, for communities to be healthier if we invest in it. If we took half of the police budget and invested it in, because we only know what the city gives to the police department. There are all kinds of grants and things that come in from places that we don't even know. And sometimes the system seems so opaque, it's difficult to even get a handle on data and numbers and funding in this process. Like James, you said that we are just now getting the call for service data that we were supposed to have last year. And so because it is so difficult to get direct information and the data to make better decisions, we don't fund the things that we need to ensure to have healthy communities. We actually do the opposite. We do allocate one-time funding or just enough for a program to do a pilot and then go away. And so it's always this like feed it a little, take it away, that doesn't do anything to address the ongoing issues. We've known forever what it takes to build healthy communities, and specifically Black communities have lacked that support since emancipation, right? Other communities have been subsidized, but by and large, Black communities and other communities of color have to fight for any type of resource. But specifically, I can't say it enough, because Black folks are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to a lot of these services that are so desperately needed in my community specifically. And I'll say that District 3 in the city of Oakland hosts more encampments than 3 to 4 city council districts combined. I know what it takes. I'm trying to create solutions to address homelessness in my district, and everything that I bring forward is rejected. So I want the energy, the same energy that people are talking about bringing the National Guard, bringing California Highway Patrol, and all of these different law enforcement agencies to Oakland to deal with a decreasing crime rate, have that same energy for investing resources into housing, permanent supportive housing, rapidly build modular housing for the homeless, investment in social services and healthcare. But once again, James, I apologize and I digress. We know what to do. We're just not doing it. So shame on us.
Right.
Well,
and
not y'all, because you all are educating the public.
And not you, because I've seen, I tell everyone you're, well, this is a public facing broadcast. So I'll just say, I like you very much, Carol Fife, and I just appreciate the work that you do and don't know anyone else who does it like you do. And it makes it very difficult to advance political agendas as an organization like APTP in such a difficult political environment, right? Where true allies are so difficult to find. And so when we have a media that, like you said, a year ago was so willing to report on how high crime was, and then crime decreases and there's no similar story,
right?
It's just it becomes a difficult situation. Or we could talk for a long time about the relationship between the media in San Francisco and Chesa Boudin, and how they got him run out of town, because those same journalists, the very same journalists who go after him, go after you,
Right.
specifically,
Right.
and would go after you more aggressively if their attempts gained traction.
Right.
Right.
They're trying.
Of course. And if the articles were popular and their base liked Carol Fife, the villain, they would go for it. But
Right.
no one likes that. That's not palatable. Chesa, the DA villain in San Francisco, that story makes sense. It builds on a lot of tropes and stereotypes for the city.
Right.
You saw when you and others were labeled as the defund candidates, that
Mm-hmm.
was dangerous politically,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they did gain traction there, and they
Mm-hmm.
ran with that. But
Mm-hmm.
now that all of the contradictions inherent in trying to claim that you defunded the police when you didn't have come out, and the fact that the political attention isn't really on that, on that storyline, you've seen even the OPA drop that, right? They don't even, well, they don't. Yeah.
There's still. I recently saw a letter from the president of the Police Officers Association, still saying that violent crime is up because of the defund candidates.
Right.
I see some mayoral candidates that are fringe and alt-right connected, trying to use that same trope that woke progressives like Councilmember Fife voted to defund the police and are the reason why Oakland is in shambles. And so it's a narrative that they are still trying to push, but
Right
they
on.
have to also live up to that narrative. So if the answer is more police, and we've saturated the city with more police academies that than the police can handle, and crime is down, what is the correlation between police and safety? We don't have more officers on the street, but crime is going down. They keep showing images of crime in order to create an energy in the people. They don't have the hearts and minds like people like yourself, James, like people who do the work that you do. They don't have the hearts and minds of Oaklanders. So they have to create it through sympathy. And the sympathy that they're able to generate is the sympathy for being able to be concerned about people who are victims of crime. We all sympathize with that. And that they know that it's a tool for control, because when you don't have hearts and minds, you got to figure out how to get the people in a different way. So that's why I believe that you're seeing this consistent trope of violence in Oakland and all of these things, even though the majority of individuals who live here are not experiencing that. But if you see it enough, you'll think you're experiencing it, right? So there's some really slick activity happening right now. And I just pray that the residents of Oakland see through it. I have to say also that Chesa Boudin's recall was not a referendum on individuals in the Bay Area's commitment to wanting to see alternatives to our current system. It's an expensive system that we know doesn't work. And even in spite of all of this rhetoric and the narratives that are going out from certain individuals in the community, even conservative people, right-leaning people, people who love the police and see the police as the heroes and the answer to every ill in society, are like, they are not showing up. They are not coming when I call. They are not addressing nonviolent crime nor violent crime. So what are we paying for? So the people that even would be oppositional to me are like, you know what, Councilmember Fife? I think you might be onto something. So let's be onto something and fund what actually matters.
Right on to that. All the more need for the calls for service data. Your district is the lake, so you know how many hours the police spend sitting by the side of the lake, strategically positioned, doing nothing. I'd love, it shouldn't be hard to understand how many hours police spend on detail and get no calls during theirs. That should be readily available information to you. They'll never give that to you. It won't even be in the calls for service report that they've so carefully generated and packaged in such a way that it tries to alleviate responsibility from the officers. Because like you said, there's so much grift that goes on. You didn't say that. I don't want to put those words in your mouth. I said that. There's so much grift that goes on within the Oakland Police Department that any serious look at some of the engagements inside, just millions of dollars will be saved. Officers who get paid double or triple for the same hour of work, right? They get paid. I don't have enough time, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. But suffice it to say, there's a way that officers are coming home with salaries, with salary, overtime, and other pay adding up to $450,000 or $350,000 or some of the obscene amounts of money that these officers are walking home with, right? And the reason they're walking home with this amount of money is because they've gamed the system, right? They've worked these contracts over a period of decades, and they've gotten to a point where they understand how to get the most money out of the city of Oakland, but doing the least work. And that's how the department goes, right? And it's a seniority thing. And the longer you've been in the department, you pay your dues, you earn these positions where you might be on desk duty, and just get a lot of money for very little. Malcolm Miller is the most popular for that. He's the officer who makes his own schedule and pulls home nearly $500,000 total every year. But there are many others as well. I just wanted to give him a special shout out.
So, James, what do you say to individuals that are like that? Everything that you just said, talking about the OPD officer that makes his schedule and brings home $500,000, talking about what's not being done is bashing the police, and that is why people should not listen to the Anti-Police Terror Project, because you're just bashing the police. How do you respond to that? Or do you?
We try to. This is, again, being the Anti-Police Terror Project, it's all about public education, right? And, I understand that there are a lot of people, like we said at the beginning, who have been raised understanding like cops to be, it's a lot to hear that the people who are supposed to keep you safe don't keep you safe at all. And it's very difficult for someone's, entire frame of how, a perspective of safety to be flipped in such a way. And so we get a lot of visceral responses. But that's why we rely on facts and data, right? And numbers, right? The whole theory behind defund OPD was after watching and experiencing the movement in 2015, 2016, when people were chanting Black Lives Matter, and people, the phrase itself, trying to get people to care about Black people, that was at the center of what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Right. Didn't work.
Yeah.
They don't care. Right. But what we did realize in the wake of the OPD sex trafficking scandal of 2015, 2016, was that what did resonate was just cold, hard facts. Can't argue with facts. And there are a lot of aspiring leftists here in Oakland, progressives, center-left, liberals, whatever you want to call them, who would at the very least listen to the facts that we presented and the data that we presented, right? So instead of saying you should care about Black people, cops are racist, I would say we give the cops $350 million and this is the return on your investment, right? Only less than 10% of certain types of violent crime are solved in a certain way. Or the murder, just really going through all of the things that our law enforcement claims to do, and then the facts and the reality about what they spend their time doing and the success doing the things, like the fact that they don't prevent violent crime, right? And so you give people enough data, if they were ever going to be on your side, this is what gets them there, right? And if I can give all this data to you, I can patiently, give hours and hours of research that we developed, and you still can't hear it, then you weren't going to hear us anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so we get as many people as we can, and then we depend on them to move the folks who are kind of 1 degree away. Right. But preaching to the choir doesn't get us much of anywhere. Right. Yeah. There are a lot of folks, getting to the folks who don't believe in what we're saying or have a tough time swallowing it is where we want to be, which is why I really appreciate venues and forums like this one, where some of your followers might, trust and believe you, but hearing that the police are no good might be a little scary. So it's just great to be in space where we can say, yeah, totally understand you feel that way. And, I'd love to, explain a couple things to you and have you see my point of view and see if you agree.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. I did get news. I'm not sure if you're prepared to talk about news I received earlier today about a facility opening in District 3 in West Oakland. Do you want to speak a little bit about that? Uh-oh. Are you talking?
My computer's about to die, so I'm running into the other room to plug it in.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask for while you're running to find your charger for the computer. Robin Walker made a statement. This very moment, there are a group trooping you. Is that you and District 3? Is that intended for me, Robin Walker? Please add more context to that statement if you can, so we can have a discussion about that. And I would like to hear more. James, I assume you got your charger.
I did. Crisis averted. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Carol.
I've experienced that on many a Zoom, so no problem. Are you able to speak about the facility that will be opening in West Oakland? Or that?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to. Collaboration between the AntiPolice Terror Project, Community Ready Corps, Christopher Lavelle Jones Foundation, and in the district of District 3, the district of Council Member Carol Fife, we will be launching a clinic. Right, we'll be building around the work that APTP has done to put Oakland on the international map when it comes to community response to crisis. And so what we will be building is a first of its kind holistic community crisis clinic.
That
Right,
is amazing.
It'll provide short and long-term care, including counseling, healing justice modalities, wraparound services, and participant-determined supports for mental health crisis. And that part is central to what we're trying to do in the wake of, and I know you and I have talked about a new court system that they're trying to put in for unhoused people at the state level. With care courts. Participant determined supports is what we're all about, right? People really need to be able to dictate their care. And so what we're trying to do is, whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed mental illness, whether it's interpersonal violence, whether it's substance abuse as it relates to Black, Brown, and Indigenous responses to violence in the carceral state, we want to be the place where people can go and provide and receive those services.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's a common theme, I think, people misunderstand about the work that we do. And Nora Smith is saying, that's amazing, James. And I think that's amazing too. I'm so proud of the continuous work that APTP has done for so many years. It was unfunded, right? And so I'm happy to see that you are actually moving into a place where you will have a physical location to offer these services, because that's really what it comes down to, is services that we can offer our communities. Can you talk about some of that work? Because we just heard from Elliott around macro. What is the work that MH First is doing that supports this community that, is so service need?
I think one of the most important things and the reason for this announcement and for this the movement in this direction is, as Elliott said, he needs support from community-based organizations, right? And this is something that we've identified over the years that we've done this, whether it be formally or informally, because as you know, in community, this is how we just take care of each other, is that there's no place for people who are in crisis to go. And there is a severe lack of resources for people who are trying to find stability, right? And so we could have 1,000 macro responders in the city of Oakland, but when they respond to someone and stabilize them, if there's no place for that person to go to find safety, right, then they're going to, they're likely to become unstable again in a short period of time.
Yeah.
Right. And so what macro responders will, we heard it today from Elliott, but we'll, hear increasingly over time as they get more ability to respond to these crises, is that they're seeing the same people. Right. They're seeing the same people and they're responding to the same people over and over again because there's no place for them to go. There are no beds. I appreciated how Elliott mentioned that if we use service centers and demonstrate need, we will possibly be able to gain more of those. I also know how difficult it is to get any funding from the state or county to do this type of work. I also know how many millions and millions and millions of dollars we are behind where we should be to even be able, we have thousands of people sleeping on our streets, right? So how many more buildings would it take, to get to a point where we'd even housed everybody? Right. And so this is where we're coming from with this clinic. on the one hand. And on the other hand, carrying on the work of folks like Miriam Kaba and Kara Page, who are trying to bring healing modalities forward, place them in a cultural context, right? And provide resources for our folks in such a way that, any Black person who's experienced the medical industrial complex, who's been to a hospital, who's gotten, care, know how dangerous it is, how scary it is, how unsafe it feels as a Black person, right? So what would it be to create a place for people who in crisis that did not feel like that, right? And then understanding that as Black people, that is one experience, but for brown people, that may be a different experience. For Indigenous people, that may be a different experience. For our trans comrades, that might be a different experience. So, this building, there's a lot that is required to make a space that can provide stability to the wide variety of folks who call Oakland home. And that's the vision. And it's just a natural outgrowth, again, of MH First, and of the work we've been doing to just provide, answer the question that everyone always asks when they say, okay, if not police, what? Right? This is just the next step in that direction.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful vision. And I am excited to watch that come to fruition, especially in District 3. And I can't express enough how grateful I am for your leadership and your brilliance, not just your policy brilliance and dedication to this work for all of this time, but just that you lead from your heart. And your heart doesn't have to be separate from your brain and your analysis. And I think oftentimes that's what tends to happen. And I realize that people have to suspend disbelief around seeing police as the heroes, but even now, police officers are not seeing that, right? And so once again, people are blaming the attrition of OPD officers on city council. But what's not being mentioned in most of these police conversations in the media, in the NCPC meetings, in some of these staunchly conservative neighborhood groups, is that the number one reason that officers give when they separate from the Oakland Police Department is a failure in leadership. And they are speaking, and I've had phone calls and emails from former OPD officers that say that this is because of the leadership internal to OPD, the revolving door of OPD chiefs. And, that's not mentioned in the media when they're telling these stories. So I predict, especially post recall for Chesa Boudin in San Francisco, that push, that large influx of billionaire money to be a factor in November's elections. We're starting to see what Bay Area communities are saying through their vote. We're seeing Pamela Price take the lead over the protege of Nancy O'Malley. We're seeing Yesenia Sanchez for the first time in, James, how many years? Sheriff Ahern not lead in a sheriff's race. We saw Diana Becton in Contra Costa County win out over or take the lead over a conservative challenger. So we're seeing all of this energy in spite of the narrative that they are trying to shove down our throats around crime and punishment. And in election years, you often see a fight between a law and order approach versus a bleeding heart liberal approach. That will become a factor in this year's elections as well. And you will see the money, the big money interests that are trying to keep the status quo in place, get behind different candidates. And I can't express enough to people who might be watching and listening, look at the data, look at the facts, but also be aware of that information, that data can be manipulated by people in power. And I'm going to say that the legislators of a city are not responsible for the implementation or keeping the city safe. And so you hear oftentimes that the city looks like this because of the council. The city is not safe because of the council. The council does not fight crime. The council does not clean streets. The council does not create housing. We create the legislation to make it happen, but the people responsible can either do it or not. And we have no control over that. So if they choose to not do things, all we can do is yell about it. And you're about to hear me yelling from now until all of the elections are done. Because if they're not doing it, it's because they're choosing not to. If we have a vacancy rate of 30% in every department, it's because HR is choosing not to hire. And so those are choices that are beyond the city council, beyond the legislation. That is an administrative choice. And it might be to make it look like or to make it appear as if the council is not doing their jobs. And I want people to be clear, completely crystal clear, that that is not what's happening in Oakland. Something else is happening. And that's what it looks like when the status quo is trying to stay alive in the face and demands of overwhelming change. They don't want that transformation to happen. And this is what it looks like when they don't want it. And you all should know that and keep fighting for the city that you want to see. And I'm going to keep telling you what's going on behind the scenes because it's I'm trying not to cuss because I know Miss Gardner is watching. I'm not going to cuss Miss Gardner, but it's some mess that's happening. And I'm here to clean house. Sorry, James.
No, no sorries. That's exactly right. And that's the situation we're facing. Like, the last report we got for calls for service data had the Oakland Police Department spending, I think it was 4% of its calls on violent crime, right? And so the question since then has been, what are you doing? What are you doing? And so, especially when they're saying that they don't have enough resources to fight violent crime, it's like, why don't you repurpose the resources you spend sitting around doing nothing? Why don't you look within your department, determine what officers don't need to be sitting around on detail doing nothing? Again, I go to the lake a lot. I see the same officers sitting there doing literally nothing for shifts every single week, right? Why isn't that officer? Why isn't that no longer a patrol officer and it's a homicide investigator if they really cared, right? Why don't they get rid of 10 patrol and hire 10 homicide investigators if they really care? Because the stats show that their patrol does not do anything to decrease violent crime. And the only thing that they can prove is that their investigators can generate information due to their investigations, right? So again, if we were being serious and officers and the police department was really trying to combat violent crime, they would repurpose a ton of their resources in that direction and do the best they can. I can't say whether or not they'd be successful, right? But again, I think what's most important for people to realize is they're not even taking this seriously, right? They're not taking it seriously. The police department's goal is to maximize the compensation packages for the officers within the police department. That's what happens when you have a union, the Police Officers Association, with so much power that it can ram through contracts with no resistance. Those contracts become less about actually making sure the job gets done correctly and more about making sure all of the loopholes and exploits allow officers to take home tremendous amounts of money. That's what's happened here. It's not rocket science, right? It's a classic example of what happens when an organizing body has too much power, right? But the tough part is when people like you try to take a rational approach to walking us back, right? You look at this and you say, wow, this is a mess. Maybe let's just get an audit. Let's just look at this and start asking. Nope. Yeah. Then you're the villain. Then there's doom and gloom. Then you try to ruin Oakland and you're the big bad wolf and all these terrible things are happening and the sky is falling and it works.
Yeah.
It's the same political playbook they've been using for generations and it works, right? That's the scariest thing, right? You know, we Desley Brooks is still here to remind us of what happens when you're a Black woman in a seat on city council who threatens the administration with truth telling, right? And so, it's a cautionary tale, right? Because we have you there, Carol, now, and I don't want people making up lies on you and then trying to throw you out of the scene. And I know that they spend real money trying to do that,
Yeah.
right? And if you weren't in District 3, where you are a powerhouse, then, you know, and even so, they're going to spend a lot of money trying to defeat you,
Yeah.
right? They're going to find someone who looks like you, right? Who sounds like you, but who doesn't keep it real or 100 like you do, right? And they're gonna sound familiar, and run that playbook one more time. And so again, I just I know how hard it is to move in a sea of disinformation like you're forced to do. And so I just want to make sure that your audience, maybe because they don't have the experience or they haven't been, or you're, you know, too polite to say it as bluntly, it's just like a whole bunch, like as you said, it's a whole bunch of mess, right? You know, being Carol Fife is just being hurdled piles and piles of mess every day. By people with millions of dollars who have a concerted interest in getting you out of their way so they can achieve their political objectives. And so, and the hardest area to communicate about is when it comes to public safety and the police. So you taking on chair of public safety and having these conversations is a labor of love. And I hope that all of your listeners know that this is, you know, what I consider what you're doing right now, one of the most selfless sacrifices that a movement person has taken on. Because you know, they ask me and I say no.
Yeah.
And plenty more of us as well. And we all say no because we know what it takes. And we know that, you know, you got to be as strong as Carol Fife if you're not going to just wither and fold under the pressure of the state.
Wow. Well, on that note, that got real heavy, but it's facts. And we have talked way over time. But I'm happy that we did, James. We got to some key information. I think one of the last data points that you just let the public know was that 4% of OPD calls for service went to addressing violent crime. And that means that the narrative that we're hearing, that a lot of my constituents are hearing, is that we can't address some of the other concerns that you all call us with because we are focused on violent crimes like the council and the community told us to. The data shows that that's not the case. So we've got to demand that. You have got to demand, because I can't tell the police what to do. That's a misdemeanor, right? I can't direct any city staff to do anything. That is a charter violation. But the community has to look at the details. I will provide you with the information. James just provided you with the information to say, this is what we see you are doing. We demand, as the residents of the city, for you to do something else. And we will not let you villainize the council members who are giving us this data so that you do something else. That's what we pay your salaries to do. So this does come to city council on June 21st. It's information that's long overdue. I will put the date and time up on my social media pages so people can weigh in with their perspectives when they choose to. But there's still misinformation going on, and we have to combat that. And I need you all to support in combating the lies and the misinformation and the disinformation that is going on. James, I appreciate your being here with us tonight, for sharing some of these data points, some of this information. Please keep it up. I encourage everyone to follow the Anti-Police Terror Project on social media, on their websites. Some of the infographics that I've seen are the most informative I've ever seen in Oakland. It's super, super important for people to be just knowing where to go get this information. So thank you for doing what you do. Here's more in the chat. So if you can see that, it says, if you want to learn more about the Anti-Police Terror Project, read more on their website at www.antipoliceterrorproject.org. James, once again, you are invaluable to this work, and your organization is invaluable to our city. And I appreciate you for being here tonight. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Kat sends her love. Annie sends her love. The whole org appreciates you and all the work you do for us in the city of Oakland.
Thank you.
Right on.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so for the folks who tuned in, we did go a little bit over. Public safety is an issue that everybody cares about. It's something that everybody thinks they know about and has an opinion on, but there are facts that we need to pay attention to when determining how to spend our dollars and where to place our attention. I'm always open to having conversations with people who disagree or people who want to just share that they appreciate where I'm coming from and what I'm trying to do. But the most important thing is for you to be engaged. Be engaged in the process so we can work together to create the city that we all deserve. So once again, on this Thursday night, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for being involved. And I will see you on another again. Good night, everybody.